So today I just wanted to try and do a quick review for The Dark Secret of Harvest Home. This was obviously originally a television miniseries. I believe it aired in 1978 on NBC, and it is based off of the novel, I believe by the same title. The screenplay for the film was based off of the novel written by John Tryon, and I believe that was the 1973 film. The film was directed by Leo Penn, who was also himself an actor-director. He is also the father of actors Sean and Chris Penn and the singer Michael Penn. I believe the majority of his directing work was film, directing television episodes, things like Hawaii Five-0, Columbo, Starsky and Hutch, Kojak. So yeah, he was definitely fairly well-rounded. The film itself stars Bette Davis as Mary Fortune, also known as Widow. We also have David Aykroyd playing Ned, or the father or husband figure in the film. We have Rosanna Arquette, a young Rosanna Arquette, playing Kate. And we also have Joanna Miles playing the wife, Beth. The film was later shown on TNT, I believe in 1992, as a two-night event. And to my knowledge, the film doesn't have a DVD release. It's only been released on VHS. Sadly, the VHS version was cut down to 2 hours, and the complete running time for the miniseries was 3 hours, 52 minutes, and 40 seconds. So yeah, it's definitely quite a bit to sit through. This movie is very well written, great plot, very plot driven, excellent dialogue, great acting. Obviously the effects are limited, but for a TV movie, what do you expect? And as I've said, the film is pretty much just out of print. The film is uploaded on YouTube, so it is possible to watch it, and I'll try to go ahead and link that in the description box. But yeah, the video quality on that one isn't too great, but for a rare film that, you know, most people rarely even get to see the original version of, I wouldn't complain. It's a free movie, and you get to see something that you probably wouldn't be lucky enough to see, so it's there if you want to see it. The film itself is very complex. You have to read between the lines a lot. You have to observe the characters in order to really grasp what's going on. The film opens up with a therapy session with the wife, Beth, and within those first 5 to 10 minutes you learn so much about her. The fact that she still has trust issues because her husband had an affair. She's a minister's daughter. I also believe that she, to some degree, does... she's neurotic, seeks perfection, definitely wants the approval of people, and you can push that back to her being a minister's daughter, which really isn't discussed too much, but like I've said, it's just one of those things you really have to read into, and that's just what I drew from it. I don't know if those of you who have seen the movie would agree or disagree, but that's definitely what I took from that scene. The family itself is basically on the verge of collapse. They're trying their best to function together and pretend that nothing's wrong, but I don't know, to some degree it feels like they're blind to their own dysfunctional behavior. The daughter, Kate, she suffers from stress-induced asthma, which basically anytime her parents are arguing, bickering, whatever, she has an asthma attack. She also feels neglected and ignored. The husband in the story, Ned, pretty much just seems to be just pushed off and blown off right from the beginning. It seems like the story focuses primarily on the women. You learn a lot more about the women more quickly. Ned is an artist, and in my opinion, I get the impression that Beth is displeased with him. He doesn't seem to be very successful. The family seems to be having some sort of a financial issue, and this is slightly relieved when Beth's father passes away and leaves an inheritance. And I think the fact that the focus is the focus being on the women. I believe that's by design, that which later comes into play into the film, but I get the impression that the husband himself, he is very insignificant, partially in the way, even though the wife and daughter do care about him, they pretty much just don't need him. So sometime after the money has been inherited, the family, I guess, gets tired of city life. They're trying to look for somewhere rural to live. It's on a family trip that I believe they have a flat tire, and once getting the tire fixed, they wander into some middle of nowhere town called Cornwall-Coon, and they pretty much just get lost. One of the first scenes that really struck me about this is they come across a cornfield, and my first impression was that this was an Amish community because there's no machinery, and when someone does come over to talk with them, they do ask, why don't they use any type of equipment, modern advancements, yada yada. The farmer basically just expresses that they prefer to do things by hand, not because of religious reasons, but due to tradition. So that definitely wipes out the possibility of them being Amish, but you definitely see that they're turning towards sort of a traditional, a rigid society in which maybe a religion may play a factor. And this definitely does come into play later on in the film as well. So I definitely love all of the subtleties. There's definitely quite a bit of foreshadowing if you really do keep a lookout for it. At some point during their travels within the town, they do find an abandoned 300-year-old home that they do take an interest in, actually want to purchase it and move into the home. And the house is later sold to them by Mary Fortune, who is the widow, and she's a very prominent figure within the community. So during the family's time in Cornwall-Coon, it's definitely understood that it is a religious community. Obviously, people have their Sunday masses. It's one of those events where people actually smarten up. It's not one of these modern day churches where people just go in their jeans and t-shirt. So like I've said, just very traditional, very rigid. But as the film progresses, you actually notice that Ned is observing that this community isn't as religious as they present themselves to be. There's a lot of paganism intermingled, which I think is a very interesting take, because throughout history, Christianity has always tried to wipe out paganism. Christmas being one of the best examples. Jesus wasn't born in winter. He was born sometime in June or July, and the holiday was moved in order to erase the solstice and just wipe out paganism, just kind of entice people to pick up Christianity. So I think it's very interesting what's going on in this community. Is you do have a fusion of the seemingly religious, but you actually have the pagan undertones. So it's kind of like they're disguising their true belief systems in what is considered modern day acceptable in order to protect themselves, which is actually quite clever if you think about it. One of the more obvious hints towards paganism in the film, in my opinion, are all of the festivals that they hold throughout the corn cultivation season. One of the most important festivals or celebrations is the Harvest Home, which basically concludes the celebrations. But if you think about it, it kind of does mirror the pagan Wheel of the Year, which basically is just kind of, I guess you could say, a calendar which marks the festivals in order to celebrate the changing seasons. So it's very similar to what's going on as far as pagan celebrations, festivals, and in relation to the corn. And obviously the corn is very important within this culture. You may go as far as calling it sacred. So the newly transplanted Constantine family do wind up becoming friends with their neighbors, Maggie Dodd and Robert Dodd. Maggie, who is a native of Cornwall Coon, and her husband, who is a blind college professor. And to some degree, they kind of do stand out, very educated people. You would definitely assume that they wouldn't remain in a community like that. They'd, go off and do something else with their time, but they've obviously returned and made Cornwall Coombe their home. Other notable friends of the Constantine family would be Worthy, which is an adolescent farmer. He definitely rejects the old ways. He wishes to encourage people to use modern day machinery. He actually has an interest in leaving the community and going off to an agricultural college in order to better the farming. So he's definitely interested in bettering things, but he definitely wants to join modern day society. And that's another thing that is obvious within the film, is this is obviously an isolated community, and they really don't have dealings with outside society. They pretty much just stay to themselves. Worthy has also been helping the Constantines out with their renovations of their home. He also serves as the love interest for their adolescent daughter, Kate, which also later comes into play. It's just such a long, very detailed story. One could refer to it as a slow burn, but it is a very long burn. But you definitely do learn about the characters quite a bit throughout the film, and if you're into character development, plot, like I've said, then it's definitely a great story. There's definitely a lot of dark and supernatural elements, but things pretty much don't pick up, I want to say, until maybe the last hour to 30 minutes of the film. Another notable friend of the Constantines is the widow Mary Fortune, played by Betty Davis. She's definitely a highly regarded member of the community. One may go as far as, once we do discover the supernatural elements, one may go as far as referring to her as a priestess, although within the community, just kind of the surface area, she's mostly known as a midwife or somewhat of a healer. But she definitely has a larger agenda, and she's definitely a lot more influential than Ned Constantine originally realizes. So it's actually during one of the bigger festivals, Agnes Fair, that Ned actually does come into realizing just how pagan the community is, how supernatural and odd everything really is. During the course of the events, Worthy does have an accident, which basically kind of does influence Kate to have one of her asthma attacks. Obviously she's gasping, cannot breathe, and Ned is running out to the vehicle as quickly as possible in order to get her inhaler. And it is Widow who pretty much just helps her get over the attack, and from then on she's pretty much just cured of her asthma. So definitely fairly interesting. One of the more odd characters is Missy Penrose, who is somewhat of a prepubescent oracle. She basically serves as the person who chooses the Lord of the Harvest, which this is a 7-year title which is assigned to a farmer who is chosen, and it's basically, in a way of thinking, he's pretty much somewhat of a demigod. It's an office that he holds, but in order for the community to benefit, once he is appointed, community members do go by and they ensure that he will have successful farming for the next 7 years. Anything from plowing his land to mending fences, and like I've said, he basically serves as somewhat of a symbolic figurehead, not necessarily just the land that he lives on. I basically see the way that they treat things. The land is basically his altar in which people make offerings or pay tributes, but that really definitely once again comes into play later why he is honored this way and why it is such a revered position, and definitely does carry a lot of weight. Definitely not something that just anyone would want to jump into. But the character Missy Penrose, she's definitely very stoic, always has a very scowling face, and for a 6-year-old, she definitely does come off as very odd and peculiar, especially when you have a child who dips her hands into the blood of a sacrificed lamb and then rubs her bloody hands onto the person who was chosen to be the harvest lord. I'd say definitely for any outsider that would look extremely odd and just totally one of those get me out of here moments. This is too bizarre. So obviously Worthy is chosen to be the harvest lord, and this is not a position that he is very pleased with. Obviously he had intentions of going off to an agricultural college, and now he is bound to the land for the next 7 years. And he basically cannot leave because, as superstition dictates, if he were to leave, he would cause the misfortune of the entire community. At some point in time, Worthy obviously decides that he is not going to stay in the town. His parents have confiscated the money that he was saving up in order to go to agricultural college. So he is basically trapped, angry, resentful, and at one point in the film during Sunday Mass, he actually runs into the church and screams, "Damn the corn and damn the mother," and basically just disappears. So obviously for Ned, being an outsider, this causes a lot of curiosity, especially the whole line about the mother. Who is the mother? And aside from this, once Worthy has left the town, he pretty much returns back to his original curiosity, which was basically a 14-year mystery of a young lady named Grace, which was buried on unhallowed ground, supposedly because she committed suicide. Throughout the course of the film, we actually realize that she had been, 14 years ago, she had been the chosen corn maiden, which is the female counterpart of the harvest lord. She was engaged to the young man, and I believe she had developed a disfiguring disease, so her position was ripped from her and given to someone else. Obviously, out of anger, she cursed the corn. Somehow, in conjunction with this, a drought occurred, and the townspeople obviously seemed to hold this against her. At one point in time, she did flee the town and supposedly drowned in a creek. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of mystery surrounding that. Even townspeople that Ned speaks with definitely have conflicting stories regarding certain details. Later on in Ned's investigations, which really does help to tie up what's going on in the film and really bring things into perspective, is that not only is Cornwall Coombe a female-dominated society, one may even say dystopian to a degree, but it's a society of women who basically engage in pagan fertility rites. Obviously, they need to harvest the land. That's also where the whole tradition of not using machinery is. You need to nurture and encourage the land. You need to work, and the ground will bear the fruits of your hard labor. But also, this also comes into play with the Lord of the Harvest as well as the Corn Maiden. They basically reenact the fertilizing of the land. So obviously that's not too difficult to figure out there, but it's during this time that Ned will just not quit interfering. At some point in time, I believe it's the night of Harvest Home, that he is jailed, and we discover that men are actually not allowed to be out on the night of Harvest Home past midnight, or any time past that hour. They must stay indoors. Anyone that does leave the home or interfere with the rites will suffer severe consequences. So obviously Ned, not being able to leave well enough alone, is reminded of an underground passageway, which does lead him out of the jail. He does make his way out to the ritual grounds and discovers that his wife, Beth, has been chosen as the corn maiden. So not only does he interfere with the rites, but as punishment, he is obviously forced to watch his wife fornicate with some man that she is not even married to. But then, adding insult to injury, he is blinded for having trespassed. Like I've said, the film definitely does have quite a bit of a dark subject matter. It does follow fairly true to the book. There are just some very mild differences between the book and the film, but you honestly aren't missing too much if you just skip the book and read the film instead. But definitely just a very well written story. I think it was very excellent. It is very long and drawn out. You definitely do have to have a lot of patience for it. But definitely if you are into very just strong plots, excellent dialogue, excellent acting, then I would say the movie is definitely very well worth a watch. I myself did skip over just quite a bit of points within the film just because the film is so long. But that is pretty much all I have for you guys today, and I will talk to you later.